Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, yeah, it's been a while, and we'll explain what's been going on over here as to why we haven't had a show out in a little
Funny,
bit.
it doesn't look like you've recycled and remodeled that studio. It looks the same. The pennants look the same. The teams look the same. The guy in the middle is wearing some pumpkin-colored thing.
Yeah, I got the orange on today. But we'll talk about it's to the left of me. It's what's out of the camera.
It's clowns to the left of you and jokers to the right.
Yeah, pretty much. And here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
That was me.
Anyway, welcome to episode 198 of the Digital to Dice podcast. Here on the podcast, we talk about sports sims games for the most part, cards and dice, PC, you name it. We tend to do a lot of talk about that, as well as things going on in the community on YouTube or Delphi or Facebook or whatever as well. So a little introduction about what we do here on the show. It's a sports gaming, mostly a sports gaming podcast. We talk about the games that we play. Ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com, digitaltodice.com. Everything is todice.com, not the number 2. Ways to get a hold of us on a text, 978-751-DICE. 978-751-DICE is how you can send us a text and chat with us here on the show. We may or may not read those texts on the show. Over on Facebook, it's facebook.com/groups/digital-to-dice. And if you'd like to support the show on Patreon for $2 a month or $5 a month to help us pay the bills to keep the shows going and keep all of our old shows up on Spreaker, ways you can do that is patreon.com/digital-to-dice is how you can sign up with that. And if you're a $5 member, you can come into our chat room on Discord and chat with us. And we have some really good discussions over there, and we lean heavily on our $5 patrons over there on Discord as far as finding new topics to talk about and asking feedback of the show. So they're really kind of our sounding board for the show. Anyway, so that's all the housekeeping there. So here's what kind of happened in a nutshell. Downstairs here, where we have Studio A and Studio B, which is where I do all my recording and my broadcasting. When we bought the house 25 years ago now, we had a little left over to closing, and we bought a small hot tub. It was the stripped-down basic model that could fit through a door. That's how small this thing is. And it barely fit the two of us, but we put it in the cellar, and it's been down here for 25 years. Really hadn't had any issues with it. Occasionally we'd have to have a new motor or heater put in or something like that. Again, 25 years is a long time. But one day I knew in the back of my mind that if it ever sprung a leak, we'd have some problems down here. And that day came last Saturday when I came home from work and I saw the rug around the hot tub was wet. And I looked in the hot tub and it looked like all the water was still in there. It hadn't emptied, but there was definitely a couple.
Gosh, could you imagine the damage that would have been if it had all had gone out?
Yeah, it was like 250 or 300 gallons. Yeah, that would have been. Oh,
yeah. My goodness.
Yeah, all my computers would have been ruined. But again, we went pretty well for 25 years without an issue. And something happened, and I don't know where the leak was or what happened, but it had leaked enough to a point where, I took all the water out, and I looked under the tub itself, and I could see that it was wet down a certain end. And so I was like, well, I don't know if we can get it fixed or not. And at this point, I don't know if I would trust it to be fixed. You know what I mean? Because this day finally came. Yeah, it's older. It's like, is another seal going to go? I still don't know what went on as far as the leak went. But I looked, and as we were walking, you could see the water squishing up between the floorboards. I'm like, okay, this is not good. So I started peeling back some of the floorboards because we had like a laminate flooring put in that was put in over the tile. And the more I peeled back, the more wet I found, the more water I found. And I ended up peeling up about 60% of the basement floor. That's how far it went. To a point where I started to feel comfortable. I found some dry spots, and then I just used fans to dry the rest of it. So hopefully I got it all. But yeah, so 60% of the floor come up. Luckily, I didn't lose anything as far as equipment or anything like that. So it's not like we had a flood down here, but we just had water that went underneath everything.
But you lost the hot tub.
Yep, so the hot tub, we decided to get rid of it instead of fixing it. So we called the company up, and they took that out the other day. And it's weird seeing the floor underneath. It's been 25 years since we've seen that floor because that's how long it's been in there. So we took the hot tub out. We had a company come in. They did a terrific job. They yanked two big burly Marines come in and rip that thing out of here. I was like, oh my gosh. And they ended up taking a lot of the flooring that we pulled up and things like that. So they did a great job of cleanup for us. So we spent the rest of the week, or I spent the rest of the week peeling up the rest of the floor. And I had to get the tile up too, because the tile, I don't know if it was from the water or what it was, but the tile was all buckled and crinkling and cracking. So, I mean, we had to replace the tiles. My dog's about to bark here. So, he's got to get on the show. He's got to get on the show, you know.
If it makes you feel, there we go. If it makes you feel better.
Yeah. Oh, he sees someone. This is how we do our podcast here. He sees someone out the window. So, and now the little one upstairs is barking. Apologize for that.
Hey, the cat's sleeping on my leg as we take this because it's a weekend.
Yeah. So let me just finish the story real quick. So we ended up having to not only take up the 60% of the basement floor, but all the tile had to come up too, because some of it was cracked and some of it wasn't. And if we're going to lay down more flooring, you need a flat floor.
Right. You need a clean surface and a new surface.
Yeah. So it took me all week. I ended up taking Saturday off from work and having a friend come over. We banged out the rest of it. But we luckily the tile was so brittle, most of it just came right up with a little shovel. You know, we didn't really have to dig too much. There was a few that were dug in pretty good that we had to kind of chop up. But that's what this whole week was. And just, you know, as anything else, if you've ever had any water damage, you just start moving things around, and you got chairs on top of couches, you know, and fans on top of those chairs. It's just a wreck. It really is. To get anything done on the floor, you got to move everything. And so everything's stacked on everything down here. And it just was very depressing and just like, I need to get this done. So that's what I've been doing this week. I haven't really done much with the podcast. I've done a little bit of gaming we'll get into. But, yeah, so that's kind of what happened over here is I ended up not only having to take up the floorboards, but I had to take up all the tile as well. And that was the killer. If it was just the floor, well, done, and then put down a couple rugs and we're done. But the tile was all damaged that was underneath the floor.
You're probably going to be grateful that you actually have a new hard surface to put whatever it is you decide to do on it, just because you're not tiling over something that's going to warp and break. And
yeah, we're right down to the bare cement down over here now. But it's just the idea that everything had to move. Studio A got put away. My drum set got tucked away. You know, my drum set was sitting on top of something. It just as it is, it's in total disarray. And me being a very full of anxiety type of person, my anxiety's through the roof as I see this disaster every time I come down here. So it's still functional down here. I can still record and I can still do some videos, but it just, when you look and everything's, you know, just in total disarray and you got this old cement floor that's all grungy looking at you, it's not really the ideal. It doesn't set the mood. We talk about setting the mood.
Yeah. No, see, so here this week, the cat had another vet appointment.
Oh, boy.
So, she's had 2 in the last 3 weeks. After, you know, I think we've done a show since Sarah fell and she got a concussion, and the cat was limping and had an infection in all 4 of her paws. And so the good news is that infection's gone. The bad news is that she gets hot spots and she'll gnaw at herself. Dogs will do that too, right?
Yeah.
And so she's worn the fur away in some spots, and we're not quite sure why. And so the good news is that she's had a second antibiotic injection. And the kid's on steroids, so I'm trying to get her to learn how to pitch for the Yankees. They're out of it, but whatever can help them continue to be bad would be great. Not quarterback for the Giants after what happened last week, and so she's had a much better week this week. And yesterday or today, as a matter of fact, as we're taping this on a Sunday, she's now starting her veterinary prescription diet.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Special food.
Yeah. Oh, special food. We got the first batch on sale, and the second batch that we got to get in 3 weeks won't be on sale.
Oh, yay.
The good news, I don't know what it is about hydrolyzed chicken liver. I got to look it up. But they want her on hypoallergenic hydrolyzed protein wet food to see if we can get rid of some of these issues that she's been having. And so the particular brand I bought, Hill Science Diet, is hydrolyzed chicken liver.
I think they have to start trying some different things to see what works, is what they usually do.
I mean, we're playing around with it. Obviously, we took care of the critical infections, but she still has underlying issues and stuff like that. But yeah, $67 for chicken liver and vitamins that you get from a bowl of cereal.
Yeah. That's how they do
You
it.
got to do what you got to do, and hopefully it helps. But
yeah, we had an issue. I don't know when we did our last show if I talked about it, but my other dog, not the three-legged dog, but the other dog started coughing up blood.
Yeah, I think it's been. Yeah, I think it's been.
That was on the holiday. That was Monday, the holiday. What was that? Labor Day, I think it was.
So that was 2 weeks ago tomorrow.
Yeah, and so we ended up rushing him to the emergency room the next day, and they think it was just an infection in his mouth because his mouth was bleeding. So it wasn't like he was coughing up blood, but when he barked, he was barking the blood that was in his mouth all over the window. And so some antibiotics helped him out. So, yeah, we've had fun here. Oh, and then I didn't even mention that 2 days after that, my wife had her gallbladder out. So they did some things. Said, yeah, we got to get your gallbladder out right away. So she's had that. So we've had fun over here between dogs going to the vets and wife's going to her surgery and floods in the basement. It's
and we've not discovered any old TV dads who learned how to play these games, unlike some of our listeners who've had them on their podcasts.
Yeah, so
just saying. So, but we've actually played some stuff between all this.
Yeah. So let me hit the music and we'll talk about some better things. Oh, and today, by the way, Ron's going to do a mailbag episode today. Is what our topic is today.
You guys have written in, and we'll talk about some. Dave and I will talk about what you've asked.
Yeah, we didn't have a topic, so Ron dug up some mailbag questions for us about us, the show, and just sports in general, and we'll talk about those today. So it's going to kind of be a listener feedback show, if you will. Is what it can be today. But let's get to what we're playing here. Alrighty, I'll go first this week. Aside from playing the basement cleanup game, which is available on Steam, but it's not on sale.
It's $359.95. Is that right?
Yeah, and you hook up a shovel to a USB, and then you start shoveling up the tile off the ground, and that's how you play the game.
Now you like those? Didn't you have in all seriousness? Didn't you have like a power washing?
I have
game?
a power washing game on Steam. Yes, it is very fun, and you power wash. You open up, you power wash your van, and then you get your first job, and you power washing somebody's backyard. And I watch power washing videos on YouTube. It's very relaxing. I love watching videos that people clean up things. It's soothing to that. So what did I play? I managed to sit down and finally I finished up my Pro Strategy Football 2023 project, which was 1978, I believe it was. So I finished all the playoffs with that and had a good time with that. I think Dallas won that. So much has happened, I forget now, but I think Dallas beat Oakland. Yeah, Dallas beat Oakland. It wasn't Pittsburgh, Dallas. It was Oakland, Dallas. And Dallas beat Oakland to win the big game in 78. Then everyone convinced me to wait to start my second project because Pro Strategy Football 2024 just come out the other day. And so I've been playing that. I know you've been playing that. So I said, okay, well, we got it. Let's fire it up. A lot of good
graphics. The graphics are out for the aught decade, by the way, the 2000s.
Okay, so they keep keep adding the mods onto that. And again, the mods are added separate. And Ron did a video on his YouTube channel about how to do the mods. When you get this game, the new Pro Strategy Football 2024, the first thing that you do in the game is it says, where do you want to put the graphics? And you can put them on the C drive, the D drive. I created a folder on my D drive for the graphics. What the game does is it creates a subfolder in that folder. Okay, so to follow that, so if you create a folder that says football graphics, it's going to create a subfolder in football graphics called I forget what it's called, 2024, whatever they call it. But
it's PSF 24, I think. Yeah. Anyway, you can't learn this the hard way. Once you've said it, you can't change it.
Yeah, you can't change it. So make sure you know where it's going to go and write it down. And so now when I go to put my mods in, I not only go to that folder, but you have to go to the subfolder, and that's where everything is. And you abstract to that subfolder, and that's it. There's no more dropping in anything. You just extract to the folder, and it does everything automatically. So I think it's a lot easier this time around to put in the mods. It's just you just got to find the right folder. So I started playing my new project, and I jumped out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I'm playing 1996. I'm playing the 1996 football season. That's the Packers-Patriots Super Bowl. And I'm in week 2, and I've already had 2 really fun games that kind of come down to the last possession. There was no blowout so far. And having so much fun in this game. I'm playing the expert mode, or the advanced mode, if you will, and I'm kind of designing my own plays, or at least that you can say who's going to get the ball on a handoff, and if they're going to go left or right or in or out. And when you're throwing passes, you can select the primary receiver. It doesn't mean he's going to get it, but that's the primary. And then you can set where everybody's going to go on a pattern. And I've designed a couple of really cool plays where I send the outside guys on the right to the left, and the guy on the left to the right, trying to cross up the defense, and sometimes it works for me, or at least I think it does, and it makes me happy when it works, feeling that like I did contribute. So playing the 1996 season, I'm 2 weeks in with Pro Strategy Football 2024 on the PC, and we're hoping to have Kerry and Mike on in the next week or two if all goes well, and we'll talk about this new version. Mm-hmm. But that's mostly what I've been playing. Again, I've just been playing the cleanup game here in the basement. But at some point, even in the middle of it, I was like, I got to stop cleaning up. I need to do something fun because I'm really getting aggravated here. And I would sit down and play some Pro Strategy Football and really have some fun with it. So
your floor set in a play for today's game. I've started 88 is going to be my football project, and we'd waited. And so here's where I am. In the 2001 Action PC baseball season Odyssey, we got through the league divisional series, including Seattle's walk-off David Bell home run to beat the Yankees in Game 5. Oakland beat Chicago in Game 5, I think 4-2. So it was close, but there wasn't the dramatics. And then Dave had the problem on the floor. And because once you get going in that round, you don't want to drag it out as long. You just want to get it done. But there are doubleheader days in those because you're trying to play it in quote unquote real time. And we thought we were going to tape Wednesday. We thought we were going to tape Thursday. And then Dave said, nope, there's more of the floor. There's more of the floor.
Yeah, that was the problem. It was like, okay, I think I'm at the end of it, so we can probably record tomorrow. And then I would get up in the morning and get downstairs and lift it up, and I'd find more moisture and more water. I'm like, oh my God, when does this end? So yeah, every day I was like, we'll record, then we cancel. Yeah, let's record and we cancel.
So you really don't want to. I don't really want to do a show on the day that I have a doubleheader. So knowing that the floor thing was probably going to be solved, we'll just start the league championship series next week. And the other thing was, as Dave mentioned, the release of Pro Strategy Football 24, and we were both provided copies. And I kind of had to mention that in YouTube, by the way. There's a box you got to check in that first screen. I'm not sure how long we'll have to do it for, but it's the paid promotion box that you need to check when we're gifted something. And so I had to do that with that. And so I figured I really didn't want to start one of the big things that I do on the channel every year and then stop. You just kind of want it to go. And so hopefully where we start with the baseball playoffs tomorrow, and then the next 3 weeks will be that in the World Series. So got our things for Pro Strategy Football. We got the mod link overnight that night and did a video on modding the game, did a video on gameplay. Both of us were quite impressed with it. Started my 1988 project because that's the season that the people on my Facebook group wanted for that. Had a magnificent game between the Redskins and the Giants, which the Giants nearly walked off on a touchdown. Played a game a few minutes ago that, plug your ears, that Denver hung on to beat Seattle, and John Elway had a concussion, and I got to say, I can't really, they've done a tremendous job with it. The AI calls, most of the plays today were AI plays. I changed some things if I didn't want to run something there, or if I thought of something in my head, I would change too. But the AI in that game is greatly, I think, improved. And I don't think I changed the formation today. Of course, Denver did a lot of 3 and 4 wide receiver sets in the mid to late 80s. And Dave Craig didn't fumble anything. And so 2 good games with that. I've been really impressed with how that plays, and the modding crew and the graphics. So smooth. So smooth.
It is. I like how fast you can do things, too, because it suggests a play for you. and you can keep it. You can change a little bit. You can change the whole thing.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like it calls for a run to the right, and I'm like, well, I want the running backs to line up like this. And then sometimes I'll go out of the I formation, and I'll give it to the fullback, who's the first back, and try to confuse the defense who might be keying on the halfback. And I just have some fun with that. Now, how much of that comes into play, I'm not 100% sure, but it does feel like that I contribute to the game, that I'm not just sitting there watching, that I am contributing when I call my plays. And the fun factor in this game is just through the roof.
It's through the roof. Now, some idiot who regularly unsubs from my channel, I'm not going to mention any names, some he just pops in, barks out all his requests, never is nice to me in any way, shape, or form. Run a reverse. So this was the Washington Giants game I did. Situation kind of called for like 1st and 10 or whatever. So I ran the reverse, and I made this never happy sub somewhat happy because they scored a touchdown on that play.
That was pretty cool, actually.
That was pretty cool, wasn't it? And so today in my game, your floor suggested I do a reverse to either Mark Jackson or Vinny Johnson or one of the Denver receivers. And so I ran it, and they scored.
Another reverse, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, on the reverse, and so so your floor is calling in plays from the grave, and they're scoring.
I really enjoy running the odd reverse in that game, and then also the draw plays. That's like my favorite play. It's just I pull this out at all times during the game. I mean, 3rd and like 8 is like a good draw play type of thing, but even sometimes like a 2nd and 4. Set up in a pass formation and run a draw and see what happens. I really love doing that in that game. There's so many things in that game I could talk about that I enjoy.
So I did a partial studio mode today. I had 3 other games going on at the same time, and so to go to highlights of that. So I think I'll just do that in 4 games at the same time, and then just do quick sim at the end. So we were cutting back and forth through the studio. New Orleans beat San Francisco. San Francisco was a Super Bowl champion that year, and they were going to New Orleans and lose.
Well, they got to lose a couple of games, So.
Yeah, just New Orleans isn't the team I would think that would do it. So that was fun. What else am I doing? Pretty much that's it that I'm willing to talk about. But again, a lot of fun with that. My Final Four for baseball: the Astros and the Cubs. Cubs did not make it in real life. Seattle, as I said, beat the Yankees in Game 5. Again, unhappy sub commenting that I got too excited on a walk-off homer to end a playoff series. He's a drip. And the other, so it's Seattle and Oakland, who were. So we'll see. Seattle and Oakland and Houston and the Cubs are my Final Four, and we'll just kind of run them through.
And who won that in the reels?
The Yankees Arizona beat the Yankees in 7.
Oh, that's right.
To win the World Series.
Yeah, that's right.
Arizona didn't make my playoffs, and Seattle knocked out the Yankees in the League Divisional Series.
Interesting.
In real life, the Yankees beat the Mariners in the League Championship Series.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we'll have so the real life champions and pennant winners aren't going to play for the World Series. We won't get the Cubs' chances up too high, but you never know because they haven't won a pennant since 45, so we can end that gap 15 years earlier. You just never know. So looking forward to that. And again, Pro Strategy Football 24, both of us are truly impressed with it.
Yeah, and that's one of those games that, we've talked in the past about, I think we actually had Marco Scola, when we talked about games that saved you or games that really had an impact on your life. And I'll always remember Pro Strategy Football 23 and 24 as the one that kind of got me through my basement problems here, because that's what I'm dealing with right now. And that's the only game I'm really playing, and it's putting a smile on my face through a tough time, considering, the wife's still sore from surgery and, the dog and the whole bit. So
you just answered one of the questions from the mailbag, but
okay, we'll get to that. So
yeah,
but anyway, So why don't we get to that? So we're going to take today's. We're going to get your feedback. We're going to answer your questions. Ron's done all the work on this, as you said. I've been the one that's just been kind of dealing with the mess over here. So we do apologize for not having a show out in the last week or so. But we did have real pressing matters. I had real pressing matters to deal with. So Ron's coming up with the mailbag question. So Ron, take it away.
All right, so Wolfie, turbocharged on our Discord for both of us, Given the relative age of most cards and dice sports Sims 3 players and gamers, what do you see as the future of the hobby versus PC console apps, etc.? So we'll start with that. The pure cards and dice, what do you think the future holds?
Boy, we've had this conversation how many times?
A lot.
And we ask all our guests about that too. And the answers are all over the place. I mean, in some ways you feel like the cards and dice version is going to go away because everything is now on your phone.
Right.
And the people who the hardcore cards and dice people are getting older, and you don't know if that pool of people is getting filled up with younger people or not. It's hard to say. Although I will say that when I came over to cards and dice, was probably my late 40s or early 50s, whenever it was.
Early 50s, yeah.
It really surprisingly was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. I was just like, boy, this is actually a blast, because when you think of board games and card games, you're thinking, cribbage, which is fun, or your board games like Monopoly and Risk and Sorry, which are okay, but I couldn't picture how you could play a sports game by rolling dice and looking at a card and looking at a chart or whatever. But boy, it does, and it's fun, it's soothing, it's relaxing, it's intimate when you're playing cards and dice. But as far as the future of it goes, I want to say it's kind of like Moxie. If
you can still buy it.
You can still buy it, and if you could get young kids to try Moxie, they might like it. But it's just the idea of getting them to try it, because there's so many new and cool drinks that are out there that they're buying and they're seeing ads for, on their phones and on the computer and on billboards or whatever it is, drink the newest, fanciest drink here. But Moxie is kind of like the cards and dice of drinks. And if you could introduce it to young people, that at least let them experience it, maybe or maybe not, they might like it. So I don't know how you get cards and dice into younger people's hands, because what's in their hand right now is a phone.
Have you ever had a Moxie?
Yeah, I don't like it. It's kind of a bad example, but
I wouldn't use Moxie's not a good example.
Well, the idea is it's something that young kids are not drinking. Is Moxie is kind of what I'm getting.
No, I get where you're going with that, but I as long as people play Dungeons and Dragons, I think people are going to play cards and dice sports games. I think, along with a lot of other hobbies, the worst thing that can happen to the hobby is it gets into its own way. And I think we saw, after the pandemic, kind of a resurgence in sales for both Stratomatic and APA. And again, there's so many other games that are out there. It may be all scattered around, but I think people are going to continue to play. People aren't going to want to necessarily play on their phone or exclusively on their phone or the computer after they've been working on their phone, tablet, computer all day. That's the one thing we keep hearing. And as long as millions of people play fantasy, whatever, I think there's going to be a market for this. Now, does most of that market morph into something you can play on your phone? Yes. With an open engine? Yes. But I do think that there will... look what Stratomatic has done this year. They printed out a black set that sold out. They did an all-star sets that have sold out. I'm not saying that it's going to replace Yahtzee, or the gaming stores. There's 1,000 board games that are out there that have gathered steam. I don't think it's as dire as people make it out to be, but I do think it will, the second half of Wolfie's questions, which we'll get to in a moment, I think it'll morph into something else. Maybe some of it you'll be able to play pure cards and dice and put the results there, and you can play on your phone or whatever. But no, I think open engine cards and dice games aren't going
I think anywhere. We're quite a ways away from it dying. That's for sure. But whether it's going to grow, I don't know, because again, you can't buy these games in a store, unless you're at
that's an argument that that needs to be had. I don't understand, and I'll be quite blunt. I think Stratomatic does a lot better with this than APA. Why you can't find this stuff on Amazon? Why aren't you working with the schools to get it in? They're quick games to teach. and it's math.
Yeah.
It's just basic math. Get the stuff in there. The second half of the question are younger enthusiasts. And our friend Marco Scolo is a classic example of really taking up the hobby. But most of the guys who are dedicated gamers are 50s, 60s, or older. And my response to that would be you probably don't really have the time to invest in an adult paper toy when you have kids.
Right, yeah.
You really, it was different when it was newspaper route money and you were playing in your room at 12, 13, 14 years old, and it was your Christmas present from your parents. But when you're talking anywhere from $70 to $150 worth of paper cards and paper investment into buying the game, and you might only have between taking the kids to practice and work and time with the spouse and all that, 2 or 3 hours a week to yourself, what would you rather do? Would you rather go out and bowl or play around a golf or go to a concert, or do you want to roll a 3-game series between the Yankees and the Red Sox? And the answer is I want to get out of the house and do something.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
It'll be there.
I think at some point you get to the point where it's a good fit for you, and it might not be until you're in your 50s or your 60s.
Right. I mean, there's the number of people who play these games in their teens and have come back as soon as the kids are gone or didn't have kids, like me, or discovered the games like you. I mean, yes, it's an older person's hobby, but just because it's an older person's hobby doesn't mean it's a dead hobby as far as as the cards and the dice. I mean, there's so much good stuff being produced,
right,
in all the different sports. I'll see if I can go for the second part of his question here. It seems like our hobby is attracting more and more enthusiasts who create online content for playing their sports games, doing seasons, etc. What do you see as the future of Sports Sims Replay online content creators, regardless of game format? Will this group of content creators keep growing? I'm not sure if he's talking about YouTube or bloggers or people who create games or some of that. I think the market is pretty saturated for YouTube. I think people look at what we do, think it's easy to do, and this is not a pat ourselves in the back type answer. It's just, we enjoy creating this type of content. People do it and realize it's work.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look and say, oh, geez, I can just do that. And then you do it and you find out that it's a little harder than you think. And again, it's not rocket science by any means, and it's not, brain surgery, as you say. But, you do have to have a knack for it. You do have to have a lot of patience, and you have a lot of trial and error and a lot of frustrating times to get things up and running. And that discourages a lot of people. And let's put it this way, there's a lot of things that I try to do in life that I see other people do and I can't do. It's like I just can't. I don't have the patience for that, or I don't have the time to set this up or deal with that, and so I don't do it. But there's everyone has their thing, and a lot of the people on YouTube or Twitch or whatever it is, they've done it enough. They've spent enough time. They might have been at it for years before things finally click for them.
Right.
And it's the same with anything else. Because who was it? We had one of the guests on, and we were talking about when people ask about creating their own graphics and things like that. And it's like, hey, how do I create my own graphics for this game like you guys do? And the best answer I heard was, a lot of us have been using graphic programs for many years, and we just learned how to do it. And it's not something we're going to teach anybody in a 3 or 4 sentence email. And that's kind of what it is. If you've done something for a long enough time, then you kind of know how to do it and how to deal with it. And a lot of it is just time. It really is. But as far as the market goes, I enjoy watching people play their games. There's some broadcasts that are obviously better than others. I highly recommend if you try this, that you watch what you do. You watch your own content. And I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people put stuff out and they don't watch it because there's no way that you would watch something like that. Between the video and the audio, if something is not right and it's unwatchable or unlistenable, then no one's going to watch it. So you have to go and, they say proofread. How many times you write something, they say proofread your thing before you turn it in. And look at all the mistakes you catch, So things like that. But, I like seeing new people get on and play in their games because you never know. Somebody might, it might just kind of, ring true with you. It's like, oh, I like how this guy does it. I like his voice. I like his presentation. Maybe I like the game that he plays. I still seek out my favorite games when I go looking around for this stuff. I really do. I want to see people, play the shootout hockeys and the apple hockeys and stuff like that. So anybody that's playing that stuff, I like to tune in with that. I really do. So I like it when I see new people come up. As long as the content is good and as long as it's not shovelware, as long as you're not doing it just to throw it out there. What is the purpose of your channel? What are you doing this for? Are you here to entertain us, or are you just here to throw stuff up there and hope people watch it? I mean, you got to kind of have a purpose to what you're doing. And when you do that, then you tend to have a more successful channel.
Michael on Facebook says, aliens take over the world, and they mandate a person is only allowed to play one game. Here's a tough one for you.
I can't. That's the desert island question. What one game
Yeah,
you think that
so,
I can't answer that because I like so many games. I would probably have to take 5 or 6 of them and just roll a die. I would roll a die.
The question is one.
Well, what I'm saying is I would take 5 or 6 of my favorite games and then assign them a number and roll a die, and I'd have to do it that way because I just. I don't know if it would be a hockey game, if it would be baseball, it would be football. I don't know which sport I would take.
You wouldn't take a hockey if you were restricted to one game forever. It wouldn't be hockey. I mean, I knew my game right off the bat.
I don't know. I mean, as much fun as I have, with Apple Hockey and Hockey Bones and Shootout and Stone Cold Hockey, I love all those games. I really do. I like every hockey game I play. I really like Inside the Crease. I like all those games. But I also enjoy my football games. I really like. I'm in a football mode right now, And it's kind of like saying, what food would you eat for the rest of your life? Well, I got 5 or 10 that I really like, but would I want them every day? No. So
you don't get a choice. That's the whole point.
Well, what I would do, if that was the case, if the alien said that to me, I would gather up my top 5 or 10 games, assign them a number, and I'd have to roll a die. And that's how I would decide because I could not, it's like your favorite band, your favorite record. It's like, what record would you listen to the rest of your life?
Strat baseball, question closed.
I'm glad, good for you. Yeah, for myself,
it's just, yeah.
It's just so hard to answer a question like that.
All right. Jam920 asks on Discord, what things does this hobby get wrong game-wise, company-wise? And conversely, what do they get right?
What do they get wrong and what do they get right?
I'll start with I'm not going to mention any company specifically by name because I don't want to shame anybody. Marketing. I think by and large, the companies that produce products do not market their games at all.
I would agree with that.
Or expect them to be the same customers over and over and over again. There is absolutely no reason for some of the larger companies to be not having print product available on Amazon, whether they make any money on that, because the money that comes from these games come from season sales, secondary sales. If you put out your game in a starter set or whatever, you got to get people into the door to do that. I think that is the biggest mistake that's being made right now. Is you've got to get people into the door to try it. It's just like crab rangoon. Let's just go with the food. You like crab rangoon? You've ever had crab?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But the whole thing of I'm going to stuff cream cheese and crab and fry it in a wonton doesn't necessarily sound very good until you try it.
Mm-hmm.
Calamari was that way for me. It was a feel like, oh, I like this. We'll forget that it's squid. And so I think that's the number one thing that companies get wrong. They don't make it easy for you to try their product. You may not like it, but for every 5 people who may not like it, maybe 2 or 3 do, and maybe out of that, one of them becomes a lifer and spends thousands of dollars on this stuff.
I think not only to try the game, but sometimes to find the game. I mean, I didn't know about any of these games until I went on the offensive, until I started playing the PC games, and I stumbled on YouTube channels and then got talking to people. But yeah, I mean, it's not like you can turn on your phone or, open a newspaper if there's newspapers still around or on the internet. I mean, these games are not advertised anywhere. And I'm not saying that about any particular person or company, but let's be honest, they're not there. They're not easy to find. When you talk to people, outside the community about these games, they have no idea these games even exist.
Right.
So I mean, you want to market. I guess that is the big thing. You want to let people know you're there. Somehow get it out there. Even a small Facebook ad. I do that with my company once in a while. You throw $100 or $200 into Facebook and try to get it in front of some eyes and see what you can get. You go to some of the conventions that they have, and I think that's a good marketing tool as well when they do that. But we've actually asked individuals to come on the show and they refuse to.
Yes.
And it's like, we're here to talk about your game and you'll make some sales, and they're like, I don't want to come on. And okay, I mean that's it's up to you, and that to each his own. But I'm thinking that there's so many ways that the game could be marketed and get out there in the public eye, and it's just not. And I know it's a niche thing, or niche, whatever you want to call that. And so, you don't want to be putting a Super Bowl ad, that's for sure, and spending that kind of money. But I think that, getting it out there and finding ways to market, and I think that's the one thing that is lacking in the gaming community as a whole, is marketing the games.
Okay, and so the flip side of that is, what did they get right?
I think that the companies that evolve are doing pretty well. I won't mention names, but there are some companies that even in the few years I've been playing have drastically changed how they do things. I also think that there are some companies and some game developers that do a good job, whether they're coming on our show or other shows, or they have their own podcast, and they talk about their own things. And I will throw out one name, Play Games.
Yes.
They do a fantastic job of marketing, and they do a great job of having videos up, and, they just have a good solid community, and that community helps promote their games. Not that other communities don't, but Play seems to be pretty out there, pretty vocal. They have their videos that are either once a week or twice a week. So they're out there actively promoting and marketing their games, I think probably as good as anyone else. And they're very I don't want to say visual. They're out in the open. You can you see them a lot more with the Play Games. And so I think that's the way to go.
I think the other thing that I would add to that is that there are a lot of places that if you write to them and make a constructive suggestion, they'll take it seriously. By and large, the community, the creators, game creating community, is very approachable. I don't think they believe that anyone is beyond anybody else. And so if you go, these are conversations that you and I have had with game creators. If you do X, is this what you meant to do? They'll go, oh, yeah, and they'll do that. And so I think very approachable. And again, you build, using Play as an example, about building a community within a game.
I think you have to be able to take suggestions and constructive criticism well. And if you do that, you can generally make the game even better and please more people that way. Not saying that every idea that they get is a good one, that's for sure. But
no.
I found that we've had people on our show that have listened to us, and including Pro Strategy Football 2024, where you can now put the graphics on the D drive. And that was one of the reasons I didn't play a lot of 2023s. I didn't have, on my current computer that I had before, I didn't have room on the C drive to put the mods. The graphics wouldn't fit. And so that kind of prevented me from playing the game. And it's a great game, and I love the game. And once I got my new computer, I could play it. But, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've had a computer that didn't have a very big C drive. And without the mods, I just didn't have any desire to play a game with just basic setup on that. So
Will on Facebook asks, how did we get into streaming our games?
Oh, how'd you get into streaming?
I watched others who had streamed iRacing and realized that was a case of, if they could do it, I knew that I was familiar kind of with Twitch, and that there was certainly people out there who would watch you stream a game. I was looking for something on Twitch. I think that's when League of Legends was the game. And there were 100,000 people on a Saturday morning watching League of Legends. At that one point, you still might be able to bet on it through Bovada, for crying out loud. And so figuring that what could I do to do that? And then I ran into people who were streaming iRacing, which is the preeminent motor racing simulation, and be entertaining and be funny and be good at it. And growing up, I wanted to be a broadcaster and just physically couldn't do it. And so why not try it on YouTube and see what kind of a response we get? You have these games that give you fairly accurate and certainly very realistic results, and though it's not going to be the same as what happened in real life, and sometimes it is, and here we are 6 years later, finishing my 5th season replaying baseball and delving into other things, and the podcast was a spin-off of that. And so that's how I got started, was, look, I can create content. It doesn't take too much. 3 computers, several $1,000s, and streaming software later. But theoretically, it doesn't take too much to get started. I mean, look at Bernie Strom. I think he might have $20 into it.
Yeah.
You can do it and be good with it.
I had been doing video game streaming for a few years, mostly the Call of Duty stuff and, the hockey stuff, like that, So I had been streaming from the Xbox and the PlayStation for a handful of years, so I was no stranger to that. And when I come over here to the sports Sims games, I did see other people doing it. I was like, oh, let me give it a try, because I've done the video games. I wonder if this would be any different, and it had its own set of challenges, that's for sure. But that's kind of how that happened. It just kind of came over from the video game streaming. One thing I really wanted to do was, when I saw all the people that were showing the games off and showing you how to play them and reviewing the games, I thought that was very helpful, and in turn, I wanted to do the same. So I turned around and I started showing off games and reviewing games and showing how they play. And, of course, my first, few videos were terrible, and I made a bunch of mistakes and said wrong things. But that's how you learn, And I still make mistakes now and then when I do stuff. But I wanted to give back, because there was a lot of people that I saw, the Al Wilsons, the Steve Towers, the D.D. Kamish, who actually just recently emailed me. It was kind of nice to talk to him again. I don't think he has his channel anymore on YouTube. But all those guys there were showing off how to play games. And I was like, I have the equipment to do this. I'm going to learn the game. Let me do the same thing and show off some other games. And so that's a lot of my channel, is showing off games and helping people decide if they want to buy them or not, or if they, showing them how to play the game to a certain degree. So that's kind of how that evolved. It came over from video games, and then it turned into, I want to give something back to the community, because I relied on people on YouTube to get me started. So if I can help somebody else, it's kind of paying it forward.
Steeler Fan asks on Discord, is it mentally difficult to carry Dave on digital dice while only having guest host status? Yes. Yes, it is. And he demotes me on a weekly basis, unsubs from the channel at every possible opportunity. But we still muddle through. Serious question. What's your, Thespian asks, what's your most memorable sports sim upset? For him, it was in the early 80s, and he was playing a great boxing cards and dice game title bout, the original one. Alfredo Evangelista, a household name in his own house, knocks out Muhammad Ali in the second round. Remember, still scoring the fight and writing up the summary like I did it yesterday. Have you had something that was just kind of so off the wall on the tabletop or playing on the computer that kind of stuck with you, that should never have happened?
The only thing that really comes to mind for me is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the Pittsburgh Steelers with momentum football both times I played. I mean, the one upset, okay, it was a fluke, this and that. But when I played again and Tampa Bay beat them a second time, that was really unheard of. And again, I love momentum football, but when you get results like that, it's like, okay, again, the fun factor's there, so that's why I play it. But when you get an anomaly like that, oh boy,
don't do a lot of things that would cause super crazy upsets like college football or anything like that. I would say Game 5 of my 78 American League Championship Series is the Rangers and the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. And the Rangers have had a good year, and the Yankees are heavily favored. And the Yankees are going to go with Ron Guidry, 25-3 Guidry, and Bobby Bonds homers twice in the first 2 innings, and they knock him out. And the Rangers upset the Yankees to go to the World Series. The Dodgers brushed them aside like they're nothing. I think it was a 5-game series. But to see what is considered one of the best teams of all time lose at home in a playoff
I remember that game. I think I remember you playing that game.
And that would be the closest to me as the biggest upset.
I guess the only other thing I could really consider an upset was the final game of the Cleveland Spiders on Strat PC, when we had a chat room full of people rooting for the Spiders, and they pulled out a win on their final game of the season. And it just was a nice, happy way for the Spiders to go out that season and in my project with a win, with everybody, cheering behind them and beating a team they probably shouldn't have beat on the last game of the season.
Next 2 questions are from Facebook. First, is there a sporting event that we'd go back and watch together and enjoy it? So John asks.
I would imagine so. There's probably a handful of them that we would probably enjoy seeing again. I know our hockey teams clash a little bit, but I mean...
The Orr game. I mean, obviously nothing that Boston and Montreal played together, because one of us would be upset at the end of it, theoretically. But the Orr game in 70.
I wonder if we would enjoy going back and seeing the Summit Series games.
Those would be fun.
Yeah, or that, what was the Canada Cup, 87 Canada Cup with...
that yeah.
Lemieux and Gretzky would be kind of fun to see.
So that would be that. You're not really much into basketball.
I'd go. I'd a classic Celtics game. I'd absolutely.
Yeah, one of those Celtics-Lakers finals games I think would be there, where the year they beat the Rockets. Yeah, I think that would be something that we would have enjoyed together.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make sure I get this right. What's the holy? Thomas asks, what's the holy grail game you've been in search of forever?
For me, it would be a PC hockey game that I can play with cards and dice and input my stats into. That would be me. And also with the ability for that game to sim so I don't have to play every game. So probably something like an inside the crease PC hockey game, but having all the other stuff sim so I don't have to play every game. And with the option of being able to play on the tabletop and put my stats there as well. So that would be my holy grail game. It would be a hockey game that sims games, that allows me to play games, and allows me to roll my dice or put in my own stats. So I can play many different hockey games and still be part of a bigger project.
I think any game engine that produces on team sheets as opposed to individual player cards, it just makes it a lot easier for me to play.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I'm doing a card and dice game, it's very much for me like reading a book. And it makes the easier it is for that to be set up, you to choose your own adventures and stuff. That
Have
would
you
be
played
kind of
back to basics baseball?
I thought I bought it at one point.
They're team sheets. Back to Basics Baseball is team sheets. And again, you get the whole caboodle. You get everything right up to 2014 or something like that as far as seasons go. But that game there, it's all team sheets. It's like the pitcher's on one sheet and the batter's on the other sheet. But it's all, so you need 4 of them for a game.
I guess the holy grail would be some sort of football game with an open engine that plays as easy as a baseball game. I guess Solitaire Pro Football comes the closest to that. I mean, we both have games that we really, really enjoy and certainly don't play as often as we should. But we have, I think we all have pet games in the other 3 sports that we really enjoy. And I think football is the toughest one to get.
Or maybe a football game that you can play by play that is done in less than an hour, which
that would
probably doesn't exist just because
doesn't exist.
Because by the time you get done each play and the whole bit, it doesn't, the math doesn't work per se. But it's just tough when you want to play a good cards and dice football game play by play, and it's an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, and there's just no way around it.
Mark on Discord asks if we've had a favorite project.
I don't know if I've had a favorite project, but I've had a lot of excellent projects I've played. The Summit series with Shootout will always stand out. The Spiders we just talked about on the PC, that will always stand out.
We got Thomas Hetrick to come on and do 2.5 hours on a Saturday night because you played that.
Right. So there's been a few projects. One doesn't really stand out over the other, but I've had a lot of excellent ones. I really have. And I tend to, like I say, do the one. I'm the one-off guy. So when I finish a project, it's kind of a big deal. And usually it's a shorter project just because I like playing so many different games that I don't always get to finish a project, especially a medium or a long project.
The one I've had the most positive feedback from, it kind of goes hand in hand to one of the things that we talk about a lot in the show. What was your favorites? When were you 14? And the 85 baseball season I did was one of the most well-received projects that I've done. And the fact that the playoffs took two crazy turns. First of all, John Tudor of St. Louis pitching lights out. I mean, every start of his, you weren't beating him. No one was going to beat him. And once in a while, it's kind of like Larry Bird in the best of 7 series or the Tom Brady or whatever. But you knew every time that I put John Tudor out there for the Cardinals, it was a loss for the other team. And if you were going to go through, you were going to have to beat someone else. And the other side of that coin was the Blue Jays blowing a 3-0 lead in their league championship series.
Yeah.
You go through and it's like, okay, we figured that Toronto should have gone to the World Series, and they've made this rather easy, and so we'll focus on the Dodgers and the Cardinals. And, well, here come the Angels, and here the Angels have forced the series back to Toronto, and the Angels have forced a Game 7. I mean, the World Series was anticlimactic. St. Louis, I think the right team won that. But just to have that, now that was last year's project. Others, again, I tend to enjoy the baseball type stuff, but yeah, I think that was that, and just because it built up momentum as we went along to that. 78 was good, but that was the pandemic year, and so that was much more of a how we survived that and all that. But yeah, 85 just was a lot of that hit all the right notes, and the postseason was as dramatic as you can expect. We do regular season stuff, and some of it's great and all that, but all anyone ever really remembers is the playoffs. Final question from Discord. Adirondack Gus asks, when playing a cards and dice season replay, do you A, keep players on their carded for the whole replay, or B, move them around? Do you use real transactions, I guess, would be the question. You like to move things around.
If I'm going to do a replay like that, I try to do as close to as played as possible. So if I got a guy that started the season with Toronto and then ended up on New York or whatever it is, I try to put that player on Toronto in the early games and New York in the later games. So I do try to match up the best I can without getting ridiculously crazy.
Okay. Since I use modified cards and dice stuff, if I'm doing a stock replay project, the computer makes the roster moves for me. If I don't, then I go with as carded, so it's usually end of season. There's some great questions we're not going to get to because we've taken a while.
We can do a couple more. We can do a couple more if you want, real quick.
Well, there's one more here.
Okay.
Michael asks, can you discuss the Shavini dice games?
The Roberto Shavini dice games, they're usually quick play games, whereas you have teams that have a rating. A lot of times they'll have an offense and a defensive rating of some kind, depending on the sport. And you will roll the dice and look at a chart and get a final score or a time or something like that. And they're very enjoyable to play. And the thing with the Roberto Chavini games is that, it's beyond baseball, football, hockey, basketball. He's got cycling and swimming and Olympics and it's a curling and hurling. It's like any game you can think of, he's got teams rated for. So that's the allure behind the Roberto Chavini games is you can play some crazy leagues, some crazy sports, and some crazy teams. And I only use the word crazy meaning that it's out of the norm in that way there. So if you have if you have a love for whatever sport you can think of, chances are he's got a couple of seasons for you. If you like cycling, chances are you can play some cycling and things like that. I think you did the Olympics one time, didn't you?
Tried to, yeah. I mean, you can do figure skating and gymnastics and rugby, and yeah, again, if you can imagine it, he's got something for it.
And so that's the Roberto Chavini games. They're quicker play games, and they're super fun.
I like the fact that, again, I won't say oddball, but they're certainly not the standard, although he does have baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. They're not the standard, they're the wide world of sports type things. And despite the fact that they can be quick play games, they still generate a lot of excitement. The numbers are very close. His auto racing stuff is out of this world. It feels like that you're at that track and the results are quite good. Sprint racing, as far as runners are concerned, excellent stuff. You can visualize it in your head, although it takes much longer to run the race than it would in real life. And again, there's just, as Dave said, if you've had an itch to do Division III 1978 college football, you can do it. And so I'm glad that stuff has been made, because if you've participated in a sport, you deserve to have some degree. Chris Dole's done it with some high school football and basketball as well. You deserve to be remembered and deserve to be replayed if that's your jam. So there were a lot of good questions that would take us another 2 or 3 hours just to answer. And so we're at an hour and change now. And so I think we got most of the gaming questions, but we certainly, if your question didn't get answered on the air, we might take the time over the next week to answer them personally on Facebook or on Discord. We didn't mean to diss anybody for that. I wanted to make sure that everyone that had a gaming question or thereabouts at least had one question answered, and all of them were quite good. But again, we don't want you listening for 2 hours.
Yep. No, and that was the fun. So thanks everybody who sent in the questions, and maybe we'll save them for another mailbag. You never know. I mean, that's what we like to do, is we like to interact with the community and, get your questions and your feedback and hopefully apply our own as feedback as well. So, all right, so let's wrap up episode 198, shall we?
Yes.
All right, so you've been listening to the Digital to Dice podcast, episode 198. The 3 stars will return next week. And we're going to give you ways to get a hold of us. DigitalToDice.com is the website. DigitalToDice.com, that is. 978-751-DICE is the text line. DigitalToDice@yahoo.com is our email. And over on Facebook, Facebook.com/groups/DigitalToDice. Well, I'm pretty beat.
Yeah, I did a football game before this, so I'm pretty tired.
my arms are just tired from pulling up floorboards and tile and shoveling it into bags and carrying, hundreds of pounds of tile upstairs to be thrown out. So at my age, that's not things we do on a daily basis around here.
Yeah.
But we're getting there. So hopefully next time you hear of us, I'll have some better news here and might have Studio A all set up again so we can play some more. But otherwise, we'll be here in Studio B doing our thing the best we can. So I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.